The smell hit him before the sight did. In the bright, unforgiving daylight, where the sun revealed everything people tried to hide, Armin Halim slowed his luxury SUV near the edge of the city dump, a place he normally passed without a glance. Mountains of broken furniture, torn plastic, and discarded lives stretched under the open sky. Then he saw them. A woman collapsed against a rusted container, her clothes soaked with dirt and sweat, her face pale and hollow. Beside her lay a small boy, motionless except for the shallow rise of his chest. In that single heartbeat, the world Armin had built with wealth and power cracked open, because he recognized her. This was Rihanna, the quiet maid who had cleaned his mansion every morning without complaint. And seeing her abandoned in daylight among garbage felt like a wound tearing through his chest. If you believe that kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Journal. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Armin had grown up believing success meant control. He was known as a disciplined businessman, a self-made millionaire whose calm presence intimidated boardrooms and impressed investors. His days were scheduled down to the minute, his life polished and efficient. The people who worked for him were names on payroll sheets, roles that kept his world running smoothly. Rihanna had been one of those names. A woman who arrived early, left late, and never once looked him in the eye. He remembered noticing her only when something was missing or misplaced, never considering the exhaustion behind her silence. Now, in the harsh daylight of the dump, she was no longer invisible. She was fragile, broken, and frighteningly still. He rushed toward them, his expensive shoes sinking into the soft trash-covered ground. The boy's face was dusty, his lips cracked, his small hands curled tightly as if holding onto something unseen. Rihanna's eyes fluttered open when Armin knelt beside her. There was fear there, mixed with shame so deep it hurt to witness. She tried to sit up, failed, and collapsed again. Armin felt something unfamiliar tighten in his throat. This was not a problem he could solve with money alone, and that terrified him. With hurried movements, he lifted the child into his arms, feeling how light he was, too light for his age. Rihanna leaned weakly against him as they made their way back to the car. The sun was high, people passed at a distance, and no one stopped. That silence from the world felt louder than any scream. As Armin drove toward the nearest hospital, his hands trembled on the steering wheel, his mind racing with questions he had never allowed himself to ask before. At the hospital, daylight streamed through wide windows as doctors moved quickly. Armin sat rigidly in a chair, his suit smeared with dirt, watching nurses wheel the boy away. Rihanna was placed on another bed, her body shaking from dehydration and exhaustion. In those long hours, Armin learned pieces of a life he had never noticed. Rihanna was a single mother. Her son's name was Sammy. She had lost her rented room after missing payments, and the agency that placed her in domestic work had cut her off when she asked for time. The dump was not where she chose to be, it was where she ended up when every door closed in the middle of the day. As the truth unfolded, Armin felt a heavy realization settle in. He had paid fair wages, followed the rules, believed that was enough. But fairness on paper did not protect Rihanna from a system that discarded people the moment they slowed down. The guilt he felt was not legal, but moral. He remembered all the mornings he walked past her without a greeting, all the times he noticed a spotless floor but not the woman scrubbing it. Sammy survived. The doctors said daylight discovery had saved him, another night in the open heat would have been fatal. Those words echoed in Armin's mind like a verdict. Daylight had exposed cruelty, but it had also offered a chance to change the ending. When Rihanna woke fully, her first instinct was panic, thinking she would be blamed, fired, forgotten again. Armin sat beside her bed, his presence awkward and unsure, but steady. He promised her safety, not as an employer, but as a human being finally paying attention. Bringing them to his home felt strange, like crossing an invisible boundary. The mansion that once felt orderly now felt empty and cold. Sunlight poured through tall windows, illuminating rooms that suddenly seemed too large. Rihanna stayed quiet, her body tense, expecting the kindness to disappear. Sammy clung to her, wary of every sound. Armin arranged medical care, meals, and clean clothes, but what he could not instantly provide was trust. That would take time. Days passed in soft daylight routines. Sammy began to play in the garden, his laughter timid at first, then stronger. Rihanna regained strength, her eyes slowly lifting from the floor. Armin watched from a distance, unsure of his role. He realized how little he knew about care, about patience, about lives shaped by survival rather than ambition. At night, he lay awake thinking about how close he had come to never seeing them at all, to driving past the dump as he always had. The more Armin learned, the heavier his heart became. Rihanna had endured years of quiet hardship, choosing silence over complaint because she feared losing the little stability she had. The dump was not her first fall, just the deepest one. Hearing this, Armin felt his definition of success crumble. What was the value of his achievements if they existed alongside such suffering, unnoticed under the same daylight sky? Change did not come easily. There were moments when Rihanna pulled away, when fear made her distant. There were moments when Armin questioned his motives, worried that his help was driven by guilt rather than genuine care. But every morning, as sunlight filled the house and Sammy ran across the floor with new energy, something softened inside him. He began funding programs that offered housing support and emergency care for domestic workers. He used his influence not to expand profits, but to create safety nets he wished had existed sooner. Rihanna eventually found her voice. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady. She began training for a better position, one that did not trap her in silence. Armin ensured her path forward was independent, not tied to his charity. That mattered to both of them. Dignity, he learned, was as important as shelter. The day came when Rihanna and Sammy moved into a small, sunlit apartment of their own. It was modest, but it was theirs. The goodbye was quiet, heavy with unspoken gratitude and lingering pain. Armin stood alone afterward, the mansion echoing once more. But it no longer felt empty. It felt changed, like him, just before the ending. A special request: please comment the word hope if this story reminds you that even small acts of kindness can save lives. Months later, Armin drove past the dump again in broad daylight. He slowed, looking at the place where everything had shifted. It was still ugly, still ignored by many, but it no longer symbolized indifference to him. It was a reminder of responsibility. He understood now that kindness was not a grand gesture reserved for heroes, but a daily choice to see people before they were lost. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something deep inside, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your engagement helps spread stories that remind the world compassion still matters. Armin never forgot the moment he saw Rihanna and Sammy under the open sky, abandoned yet alive. That memory stayed with him, breaking his heart again and again, but also guiding it towards something better. And in that relentless daylight, he learned the most important lesson of all: wealth could build walls, but kindness built bridges, and sometimes, a single moment of noticing could change more than a lifetime of success ever could.